We have the last batch. After that rather grim story, now we have, I'm not sure if it's funny or if it's sad, but it's a story called Blessings in Disguise, and I'm sure many of you will identify the main characters in it without our having to say anything. They're going to kill me for saying that. So the three writers are Ramprakash, Anitha Murthy, and Jeenu Jaison.
Blessings in disguise. His bright white clothes and gold jewelry glinting in the sun, the politician smiled and waved to the people around him, as if they were cheering for him. Varananda saw him approach the stage and greeted him with a weary smile. He had been sitting in the same spot, greeting devotees and granting blessings all day, and had begun to tire under the hot sun. This man was here to wear him down with large words and hidden meanings. Swamiji, the politician, had his hands folded in respect. The godman smiled and bade him sit next to him. Good health and blessings to you and your family. They looked at each other and smiled as if they were old friends. Swamiji, the elections are coming. Of course they are. I need your blessings so that I may continue doing good for the people. 4 years of my blessings you had, and what good did that do? Of course, the times are tough, and the people need a leader like you to guide them. He added slowly, I hear the season has been particularly hard on the farmers. The politician turned his empty palms towards the sky. God's will, he said. Varananda did not smile, but the joke wasn't lost on him. How can I help? Give me your support, Swamiji. Show the people that the gods are on my side. God doesn't take sides, but men do. The godman's eyes narrowed. He was beginning to hate this man. Grant me a blessing, Swamiji. The politician smiled widely, as if taunting him. The fat sod, his pockmarked face an ugly smile. What do you seek? To win the election, Swamiji. Show the people that you are with me, that God is with me. And if I should refuse, if I think you aren't worthy? Now, why would you do that? You with your lovely ashram and devoted following. It is by God's grace that you found such a lovely piece of land without any legal complications. Ah, there it was, the threat under the pretty words. I still can't take sides. If I express my support for you and you were to lose, your successor or rival would make life very difficult for me. The politician smiled. If you supported me and I still lost, what sort of a god would you be? The two men stared at each other, sizing up the opponent and ally in front of them, both peddling hope for a living, each a fraud in the eyes of the other. The politician didn't wait for a response. He snapped his fingers and a man appeared with a large tray draped in a shawl. The politician removed the shawl to reveal an idol of the goddess. It glittered and looked heavy, as if made entirely of gold. Accept this humble offering, Swamiji. There was no opportunity or time to refuse. The politician smiled and posed for the cameras. The contacts in the press would do the rest. Thank you for your blessings and support, Swamiji. All it took to grant that blessing was a smile, a picture, and 2 open hands. The prize would come later.
Swamiji, Prema madam has come, Bala whispered. Why are you even telling me, Bala? Show her in. Trumpets and bugles ought to have sounded at the entry of Prema madam. Her full name was Prema Nav, nicknamed the Love Boat by the tabloids. She sailed into the hall, her ballooning stomach preceding her like a sail. Her diamonds glittered like disco lights, and her silk kanjivaram sari shimmered. A minion tottered behind her, almost collapsing under the weight of the huge box he bore. Swami Varananda's eyes lit up like her diamonds. The assorted gold necklaces and bangles that adorned the matron distinctly made a ka-ching sound. Prema was the owner of the rapidly rising Banawat Seeds Company that supposedly specialized in genetically modified seeds. Seeds which gave rise to sterile crops so that the farmers were forced to buy new seeds again. Doubtless she had reaped a good harvest. And to what do I owe the pleasure of this visit, Prema Ben? Swamiji beamed at her. Swamiji, first please accept this small gift from your humble servant. Prema bowed before him. She then scowled and snapped her fingers at the minion, who scrambled to obey her command. When the box was opened, the entire assembly gasped. It was a terrible bust of the Swamiji, which bore absolutely no resemblance to him. The bust was completely golden. The audience was no doubt shocked in more ways than one. What did she want now? Prema Ben, you are too kind, Swamiji said, trying to appear composed. Nobody had ever gifted him something so spectacularly ugly. No, Swamiji, you are too kind. You blessed my company last year, and it is now amongst the top 10. With your blessings, it will be the number 1 this year. Number 1 in sucking farmers dry. Sister Prema, I have no doubt about the success of Banavat. I have brought a truckload of seeds, Swamiji. You can distribute it to the poor farmers. Their lives will be made, or ruined more likely. You are the true savior of the farmer, Prema Ben. No, Swamiji, you are the true savior of the farmer. Our seeds would never have done so well without you. Her land, her useless seeds. Did he have a choice? It's all in God's hands, Prema Ben. It is God's will. No, Swamiji, you are God for the farmers. They worship you. Because you say so, they buy our seeds, no matter what the cost. The farmers were simple idiots, but he was not. God is great, Prema Ben. No, Swamiji, you are great. Swamiji stifled his annoyance. The entire day would go on like this if he didn't nip it in the bud. Prema Ben, I pray that Banavat be the top seed company. Bala, take Prema Ben and give her the special prasad. He heaved a sigh of relief as she departed. There was no escape. He would reap what he had sowed.
Raghu came home drenched in sweat. It looked like the sun had entered some competition to prove itself the hottest. The house was warm as an oven. There was not much escape from the heat, even indoors. Padu, get me some water, he called out to his wife. Padma, in her late 40s, looked more like 60 with most of her hair grey and skin pale. She came out with a steel tumbler in hand, wearing a crumpled cotton sari and mismatched blouse, both faded by years of washing. What did the Swamiji say? She asked. Raghu gulped down the water before answering her. He looked out of the window, where the once green plants now bore a look of burnt life. The fields extended to a few acres, but the crops were not looking good due to the lack of rains and the increasing heat. Last year they saw many people suffer, but they were wise enough to keep some savings to manage through. Their crops also did well, as they sowed the seeds which were bought at the ashram outlet. This year, since they had to send their son to college, they went ahead and took a loan, hoping to pay it off once the crops were harvested. To reduce the cost, they decided to sow their own seeds, which backfired. They had to invest in the seeds again, and this added to their burden. Swamiji was not available. I met his assistant Bala. He says we should first make some offerings to please the Lord and receive his blessings, Raghu said in a broken voice. Padma looked at his tired face. He had aged beyond his years, and his eyes reflected a kind of despair she had never seen before. The next day, Raghu and Padma started to the ashram, carrying a gunny sack containing the last of their coconuts. They had decided to give them to the ashram and pray for a miracle. Their son looked at them and asked, "So you think the coconuts are going to bring good crops? I wonder if the Swamiji will even notice that you gave them." "Amma, why don't you leave those at home so that we can have at least something for ourselves?" Distressed, Padma said, "We have to do something, my child, otherwise we will lose our land too." By the time they reached the ashram, Padma was dizzy with weakness. Concerned, Raghu said, Why don't you rest here under the shade? I will go make the offering. Padma was too weak to protest. She watched as Raghu walked away and closed her eyes to rest. When Raghu reached the counter, he lifted the sack and said, "Coconuts as offering." The volunteer looked at him disapprovingly and said, "Take this chit and collect your prasadam. Swamiji is in the hall, but he'll not meet you today. The stage is cordoned off by security since the politician has come." The volunteer tossed the sack onto a huge pile of other offerings. Raghu's heart sank. His son's words had come true. Raghu returned to his wife and gently shook her awake. She stirred and looked at him with hopeful eyes. What could he tell her? "Padma, the offering," he began tentatively. "Did Swamiji accept it?" He paused for a moment. Yes, I couldn't believe it. I was so lucky. Swamiji himself passed by and I could submit the offerings directly to him. He accepted them and blessed me by touching my forehead. He has now gone to the hall. Come, let's collect our prasadam and go there." Her eyes lit up with joy. They headed over to the hall, where Swamiji was on the stage, seated on a throne. He glittered from top to bottom, in his golden robe, zari-bordered shawl, and studded rings on all his fingers. The rich and powerful ensured the blessings came their way. As the notes from the bhajan grew louder, Padma closed her eyes in prayer, and Raghu slowly put a protective arm around her.